We are so honored that you're here with us for Season 3.
We want to share, connect, and grow the paper flower community with you. Welcome to Paper Talk.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Paper Talk. Today, we have a very special guest. Her name is Susan Bonn, and we've worked with Susan for a couple years now. But before that, we were Instagram friends, and we were supporting each other as our paper flower business and paper flower journey started. And now, I mean, look at her. She teaches tutorials. She runs our makers meetings in our Facebook group. And she does this consistently every month, even from her hotel when she's traveling. Yeah. She's so committed to that.
Yay.
And and then the last couple of months, she and Jerry and at one point Inga was doing, she is continuing to do the tutorials for the Paper Flower Challenge every month. We're so excited that you're here with us, Susan, and welcome to Paper Talk.
Thanks so much for having me. I know this is going to be fun.
It always is fun when you join us for our chat. So I mean, we really want our followers and listeners to kind of get to know you. They've probably heard of Susan Bonn. They've seen your name in a lot of our group activities on the Paper Florist Collective website as well. But why don't you start by telling us a little bit about how your paper flower journey started?
It's interesting because when you had asked me to do this podcast, I started to think about, wow, how long has it been? When did I make my first flower? I'm not really sure. So I went in and I went to Instagram, right? Because we all use Instagram so much. And I checked to see when I'd made my first flower post in Instagram, and it was in September of 2016.
Oh, wow.
And right from there, it's funny because I see so many new artists, paper florists that are so excited to get involved in, making paper flowers, and they really want it to happen quickly. And I have to tell you, the first time I felt like I was making some headway was not until I think it was August of 2018. Our challenge flower for that month was camellia. And I really wanted to copy a camellia that I had in the garden. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. I think it was one of my better flowers that I've ever made. But the clicker for me was when Tiffany Turner told me I had done fine work. That was my, oh my God. Tiffany Turner liked my flower. It was pretty exciting. And I think that is a big confidence booster when someone that you look up to reaches down and says, you're doing a really good job. That definitely makes them good teachers. And I really try to do that with our newer paper florists. And I think some of them don't realize that we've been making paper flowers for over 5 years. All three of us have. Mm-hmm. And that they see the work that we post and they think, why can't I do that? And it is a process. It takes a while to do it. So I really try to encourage them to be patient with themselves and just enjoy the journey. And it may not be, perfect, but who cares, right? Mm-hmm. As long as whatever you're doing, as long as it makes you happy, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Absolutely.
You're going to look at it yourself and make your own judgment. But it is really important, I think, to encourage those that are on the path behind us.
Mm-hmm. What point in your paper flower journey did you decide, I can start teaching this? What was that turning moment?
Gosh, I'm not really sure. I know that Jesse, you'd had some classes on Teachable. And you had a couple classes on Teachable at that time when I did. And quite frankly, I was looking around and seeing who else was teaching. And I just thought I would try because I so enjoy teaching. Everything that I've done in my life has been about teaching. It's funny, I didn't even think about becoming a teacher, but when I was in the financial services industry for 40 years before I retired a few years ago. And I always enjoyed working with the newer people that came in. And I was a skater. Most of my life, I've been a figure skater. And I love teaching class once in a while, they'll ask me to teach. Mm-hmm. And I just enjoy doing that so much and encouraging other people. So it seemed natural for me to want to share our craft. And, it's a real dichotomy. The problem that we have is that there's so much free stuff out there today that it's hard to put a price on our classes when everybody feels like I can just look on YouTube and I can learn how to do it from there. Why do I need to pay you? Mm-hmm. And that's a problem I think we all have that isn't going away. But I do like to encourage other people to do it. But we can't spend all that time filming and editing and getting cameras and especially the time for editing. I find that I might have 3 hours of filming, but there's really only 30 minutes of what I can actually use.
So he's editing it down.
With like 50 takes to say, welcome to the paper florist.
Well, you seem very comfortable with the camera now. I mean, I watch your lives and I watch your videos that you have for our group, actually. And you look very composed. You look very relaxed. You speak directly to the camera. So I'm sure it took a lot of work to get to that point.
Well, I enjoy talking to, and I know this process for most of us, when I look at the camera, I see my friends out there. And I don't know if you saw it, but it's been a long time now. I did a video on letting go of fear, and it was specifically for paper florists, but it applies to anything that we do in life. And I looked at the camera and I just talked to them like that was my friend. And I even had someone say to me, I felt like you were talking to me. You can't put any value on any of that. That is just the thing that makes everything we do worthwhile.
For sure. I think a lot of people, I think it's both. I mean, you touched upon the paper flower journey in terms of it took time to feel comfortable and feel I'm an artist. I think, all of us struggled with that, especially where we came from a different field, where we're still, or was at that time still in that field or left that field. But our identity was defined by, you were in the financial industry. I was a lawyer, Quinn was in catering, and like, how are you, getting to that point where you can say, wait, no, I'm not just that. I'm also now, I'm an artist. I'm, paper flower artist. That takes so much time. And not just because your work it takes time to get to the place that you feel comfortable, like you said, but also your identity. It's a shift in your identity. At what point are you comfortable saying to people, hey, I'm an artist, and not cringe, and not be like, oh, I don't want to go on. And, but I think it's the same thing as a teacher. Quinn's question about, at what point did you feel comfortable teaching? I think that says a lot about your paper flower journey as well. At what point are you confident that somebody would want to learn from you? Like at what point are you happy that, maybe I've done something that no one else has, or I've done something that everyone else has, but people want to learn from me. It's hard to know, but at the same time, if it doesn't hurt putting yourself out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, it's a couple of hours or maybe more of your work, but, of like editing and stuff, but it doesn't hurt. You never know because, if you don't put it out there, no one knows that you're willing to, or you want to offer teaching. And like you said, there are free things available. So maybe do a free tutorial first, see how it goes. That said, there's a very different market for free people. So there might be tons of people downloading your free ebook, but they might not be willing to buy. So it's a little bit different, but I think it's the first step. Just getting comfortable with the tools and all the instruments involved and the technique, and it doesn't hurt,
No. Well, the first class that I did was the basics of paper flower construction. Because if you go back to when we started, there was nobody out there that was telling us anything. You got a little bit here and a little bit there. There was nothing cohesive about what do you need to get started? Now we have the Posy Box starter box and, things like that. So I did my first tutorial with the basics of paper flower construction. And I talked about the most common papers that we use, how to pick wire, what kind of tools you need. And of course, then I have to go back in and now add the 90 gram because so I'm going to have to go in and add. And I do go into that class from time to time and I add bonus content because I feel that it really engages. If there's something new and I add another 15-minute video on it, then people are going to see the value in that. They're going to feel like you're not just selling them something, that you're really participating with them. I think that is so important. But we didn't have any one place. I took classes from Tiffany. I took classes from Lynn Dolan. And, I learned a lot from those two. And like most of us, I started making paper flowers with Leah. And my first big piece that I did, and I post it once in a while just to say, this is where this all started. It was a big, and it was really pretty. It was but it was all done with text weight paper. It wasn't crepe paper because they're just so different. And the first time I tried to use crepe paper. I still have that flower. It's pretty bad. It was a ranunculus. It looks nothing. The only thing that makes it look like a ranunculus is it's round and it has a green center. That's about the only
well, you're very ambitious.
Yeah, it's like, what? That was
really hard.
Not the best place to start, but there wasn't anybody there to tell me that I couldn't do it. And I hated it. It was awful. And I said, crepe paper's not for me. And I started going back to text weight paper. But what I found was because I was using my Cricut to cut all my paper, I wasn't putting myself into the work. Whereas crepe paper, I think occasionally I use my Cricut to cut crepe paper, but only if it's a really intricate flower that I just feel like I don't want to spend a gazillion years, trying to cut out these petals. Mm-hmm. So I will use it for that. But in general, I think it's really important for people that's when it becomes art, right? Is when you can make it your own. And I think cutting the petals is part of that. And people, and one of the things I really like to tell people is that when you're cutting out your petals by hand, how you cut out your petals and how the shape of your petal isn't the end all of how your flower is going to turn out. I could have 5 different people cut petals for me, but it's not the petals. It's what you do with the paper after they've been cut out that you make it your own. Mm-hmm. That's I really try to pass along some of that information. And when we do our paper florist tutorials every month, I never use templates for that. I really encourage people to put themselves into it, and they're all different and they're great. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love what we see from our members.
They've been amazing.
Yep. Our community is fantastic. Always cheering each other on, giving out pointers. If you guys are interested in this Facebook group, it's just thepaperflorist.org. Just search for it. Answer a couple questions. We'll let you in. The community's warm. They're fun.
Yeah.
It's genuine. And the questions we get, the answers people respond back is just absolutely fabulous. We have an amazing maker meeting every single month at the last Saturday of each month that Susan hosts on Zoom, and you get to meet some of the community members, get to chit chat, talk, find out what people are making each month, which is so fantastic. And you do such a wonderful job monitoring that and putting it together. So thank you so much. We really appreciate all the work that you do.
Well, thank you. I love doing it. I don't think I would do it if I didn't love doing it. Mm-hmm. And the people that we do get some of the same people every month on the makers meeting, and I love that, but I'd like to get more of our members involved. In our makers meeting, a couple of our members actually get on a little bit of time, maybe 10, 15 minutes before the appointed time for the meeting to start. And one of them is in New Zealand and another one is in England. So they are literally opposite sides of the planet. And
can we do a shout out? Sorry, can we do a shout out?
Yes.
Such wonderful, wonderful ladies. Mm-hmm. Honestly, like
Wendy Anderson is amazing, and she's probably the biggest cheerleader that we have as a group.
I know,
and she and Sylvie Ashton have developed this bond between the two of them, and they get on before the meeting starts. And I just go in like half hour beforehand and turn on the Zoom meeting so that they can have their little chat before we start.
I love that.
That's awesome. And you know what? Really both of them post so frequently in the group. And I swear, like Sylvie will like pull out something. She's been making a lot of plants, and I'm like, oh my God,
so much.
Great. Like, why are you not writing a book?
Right, exactly.
To a publisher. But like the techniques that she's been using and sharing too, I'm like, oh my gosh, like thank you so much for sharing this wealth of information and experience that she has. It just creates this wonderful dialogue between all of our group members about, well, what do you use and how do you use this? And like just like everyone chipping in and like sharing their 2 cents of how they use a certain type of paper or a certain type of medium.
Yeah, I love it.
I think honestly, everyone in there, like their work is so amazing.
You know,
I have to say, I'm like, I was not like that when I first started.
Right. Well, the paper flower challenge, a lot of times I'm really challenged by it. Mm-hmm. So in October of 2020, our paper flower challenge has been Alstomeria. And while it's really simple bloom to look at, it's got 6 petals, nothing looks really out of the ordinary. It was one of the most difficult flowers I think I've ever made. And I didn't really have a guest artist this month. So I did, or for that month. And so I basically made the entire project on my own. I had no idea what I was doing. So what I really like about these paper flower challenges is we all get challenged. It's not just our members are getting challenged. We are too. And we're learning. I learned some great new techniques every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
And just sharing them. I mean, that's like, thank you so much for sharing all of your experience and the techniques that you learn as you're making those flowers. Because it really ups everyone's level. Like, you know, like beginners, quote unquote beginners, like when I started, I'm sure I would have started a lot lower in terms of the techniques that I knew. But being in the group and having that access to those, you know, tutorials from you guys, everyone's flowers are just wow. Like some flowers I've never made. I'm like, that's probably better than what I would have done. You know?
It's amazing to me how the caliber of the work that they're doing is awesome. And I love the fact that we have the banner every month where we take the previous month flowers. Everybody submits their photo on a thread that I do. And we end up with just amazing work. I would be hard pressed if we looked at any of those flowers and said, this is a beginner.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because they just really, once they're given the idea, the skills, and they learn the techniques, they just blossom just like the flowers.
Yeah.
Just like the flowers that they make.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to see them.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about pricing because we are talking about pricing a lot this season.
We are.
You know, you run your own business. And so it'd be really interesting to hear from you. What are your thoughts on pricing? Let's talk about, I mean, because we talk so much about our group where there's a lot of, you know, newer paper flower artists. What kind of advice would you give to a new paper flower artist who wants to offer their paper flower product and they're not quite sure what to do about the pricing part of it?
Pricing, as we all know, is the most difficult part of what we do. If I would have one recommendation to most people that want to sell their flowers is learn your craft first. Spend some time. I've seen some that, you know, have made 5 flowers and want to write a book about making paper flowers. I'm like, take the time to learn the craft, learn the paperwork, figure out how it works and how it works for you. But as far as pricing goes, that's really hard. And I think most of that is based on how comfortable you feel with yourself or selling because you're selling yourself every time. So what I do is I do live in a high cost area. So I know that my flowers are going to cost a lot more than someone maybe in the Midwest. It's just because I live on one of the coasts and that's the way it is in California. Quinn has that same experience in Washington where we can maybe charge a little bit more because it's more affluent area. But so I do the same thing that everybody else does, I think, is I figure out what I'd like to be my hourly wage and then triple the cost of whatever the supplies are. And I think it's super important to keep track of how much your supplies cost. I don't think people realize what the cost of each thing is. And obviously, if you're buying in bulk, or even wholesale, your cost is going to be different than someone who is just starting out, maybe doesn't have a wholesale account somewhere and has to pay retail for their paper. But even though my paper is maybe less than someone else's, I still calculate out how much my paper costs. And what I do is I figure out how much it costs per running foot of the paper. And because I found that an awful lot of papers take about a foot of paper, it's pretty universal, I think. Or I can easily say, well, this flower took 2 feet of paper. It's easy to do it that way. So I break down the cost of my paper per foot.
And do you break it down based on the type of paper? So it's if you used a foot of 180, I know that it's the cost of that divided by, you know, whatever, and it's a foot. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's a foot of whatever type of paper it is. And, you know, then we've got glue and we've got wire and tools. How much do your tools cost?
Did you have to buy a new tool for this particular flower?
Exactly.
New medium for this particular flower. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, if you're using Mod Podge on them, you have to calculate in everything. And that is going to take some time and some discipline to do. And that's not going to happen overnight. And I have to say, when I first started out selling them, I just really kind of shot from the hip and said, what can I sell this for? And I actually still do that to some extent. It's like, what will the market bear? But I think it's really important to know how much your materials cost, and don't undersell yourself. You have a talent. You're an artist. So I have artist friends and they don't necessarily break down how much something costs because they don't see as what they have as a product per se that they're selling, but they definitely don't skimp on their hourly rate.
That's a really good tip.
Yep.
I mean, at the end of the day, like sometimes when I think about it, at the end of the day, everything is in a pot, right?
Yep.
Right.
When you can divide it up and say, okay, this portion is for my materials. This is for my labor. This is for, I don't know, because I've got 10 years of experience, or this year is all my mortgage and my rent and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like all of it together. The other thing we were talking about at one point was shipping, you know, and shipping cost of, let's say not shipping, but let's say the materials that go in or the labor that goes into the time, you know, it takes for you to pack. Everything is, I mean, let's say you charge $100. That $100, if you break it up, then you could break it up, but at the end of the day, you still get $100. So how you allocate where or how much everything is, that's kind of an internal thing that maybe is your secret formula, your secret sauce, or whatever you are comfortable with. But as long as it pays for everything that you've listed in one way or the other, whatever percentage it is, then you're
including your own value.
And yes, your own value. That one, I think.
And I think that's the hardest for all of us is what is your value? And, you know, the three of us, we've been making paper flowers now for 5 years. And I think we have a pretty good sense of what our value is. And I know that as a new paper florist, that's really hard. It was really hard for me. And I know I'm not alone in that one. I know that everybody says that. I mean, I started selling my paper flowers for $10 a piece when I first started. And I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But
I think
if you
have
look
to start
at
somewhere first.
Yeah.
At a price that you're comfortable throwing out without you like, ooh, $10? You just say, yeah, it's $10. And the confidence in your voice when you say that to a customer, the customer just accepts it. But you have to be 100% behind your product, behind your pricing before you can even vocalize it. And sometimes practice in front of the mirror and say it and look in your eyes and say, do I really believe in this price? All the effort, all the value. Like, what is value? Value is such an important piece. The experience that you lay on top of each part of you that makes you stand up and shout, yes, I'm a paper florist. My flower is worth $10 or $30 or $40 or $50. And it's just being able to be happy with yourself when you say that is the most important thing that you can do for yourself and for your customer.
Right. And I think one of the things I have a real belief in this is under promise and over deliver.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I always under promise and over deliver. I always give them more than they think they're getting.
But when you say that, what do you do?
I will either especially if they're in Marin County, I will hand deliver them, or I'll throw in a couple of extra blooms, or the presentation I think packaging and presentation is everything. And that's part of the over deliver. I always heard this when I was younger, that anybody would rather have a hamburger well served than a steak in a vase. So as crazy as it sounds, it's true. It's in the delivery a lot of times. I always make sure that when I wrap up my boxes that a ribbon comes up and around it and ties on the top, and there's a personal note in the top of each box, so that when they open it up, that's the first thing they see. I've added in a lot of branding with that. I think that when people, you got to admit, when you're in front of somebody and they have that box and they open up that box and their eyes light up, that makes my heart sing. I love that. So I think part of all of the over delivery is just making the packaging has to be perfect. Now I use brown boxes for mine. I did order some white boxes, and I'll continue to order white boxes for different sizes. But I think a white box with your label on it is a big part of success. And I even write a little on the box, something beautiful inside. And, just that starts the whole experience, right? There's something beautiful inside. And I think that makes a difference for people.
Yeah.
Let's face it, when you go to Neiman Marcus versus going to Target, right? When you're in Target, you're lucky to get a bag at all. If you go to Neiman Marcus, you're going to get a bag. Everything's going to be wrapped. The presentation of it is perfect. And I think people really buy into the presentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it really, really helps. My biggest success in my mind of the validation of my business is that Carta Tecnica Rossi used photos of my flowers in the catalog of their 90 gram. And they were at a paper flower show or a paper show, and Tiffany Turner was there, and she told me she saw my flowers blown up on big posters.
Yeah.
Like 3 of them. There were like 6 pictures and 3 of them were mine.
Yeah.
So
I think we saw those in the group. They're beautiful.
Yeah. I was just, when I got the email from Martina, I was, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? And I always thought maybe that might had something to do with it. And he said he didn't. So, but I do. But that's my new favorite paper is the 90 gram. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of one of those things that it's a once in a lifetime. It didn't mean money, but it meant validation. And I think everybody's looking for validation.
For sure. So and I think you're very good at giving that during our makers meetings and in the Facebook group, just providing that kind of reassurance that, you're on the right track. Great talk, great reminder for us as seasoned paper florists that our words matter, our encouragement matters. Yes. So to be very careful in some aspect of what we say to other paper florists, right? Because it does matter. There's a weight to it, Mm-hmm.
I will take, if one of our members is having a difficult time with our challenge flower, I will ask them, how can I help you? And there's many of our members, I've done really short 15-minute Zoom meetings with them just to walk them through something that they were stuck on. I think it's really important for us to do that.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Over-delivering, Susan.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. All
right. So we have a fun question for you. Something Jessie and I are starting the season. So when you're making all those beautiful paper flowers, what is your drink of choice and what do you want?
The drink of choice depends on the time of the day.
So true.
I'm a real coffee hound. So we have a lot of coffee during the daytime. And
black
I do like to, I'm sorry?
Black coffee? Is it
No,
black?
I have a really nice coffee system at home that makes a macchiato for me every day.
Oh, nice. Fancy.
It'll even layer.
You have to ask because it makes a difference.
It does. So I have plenty of macchiatos during the day. And so that's super fun. But if I'm working in the late afternoon, early evening, I most likely will have a glass of wine while I'm working, and I enjoy it. And what do I watch? Wow. Lately, unfortunately, I've been streaming CNN, which is probably not
While you're making paper flowers.
Yeah,
does it affect the way you make your paper flowers? Do they get angrier?
Exactly. And the question is, there are 2 offsets, right? The watching CNN or listening to CNN gets me all ramped up, and the making paper flowers is like by Zen on the other side. So they kind of cancel each other out.
Yeah.
But in normal times, because we know this isn't normal, I really like the show The Blacklist. I don't even know if I've ever gotten through it, but the fun part about it is you can just pick up anywhere and you're good to go. And so I really enjoyed that. That's one of my favorites. And I loved Scandal. If you haven't watched Scandal, watch it. The clothes that Kerry Washington wears, worth watching the show.
It's so beautiful.
Really beautiful. So yeah, I look for something that doesn't require, I did Game of Thrones, that way. Something that doesn't require a lot of thought.
Yes.
I want something because I want to concentrate on what I'm doing. I don't want to concentrate on what's playing. So I really try to look for easy to watch things and
just spoon feed me.
Yeah, just something coming into my head. So I mean, because we all know we have those little voices that's talking to us as we go along, and what is this going to come out okay? And
it's nice to drown out that voice.
When you all had asked me to do this, one of the questions you had was, what advice do you have? One of them is, don't stop. Just keep doing it. Even if you think it's not coming together, keep going. It'll come together. Yeah. It will. Yeah. And if it doesn't, so what? You've wasted a little bit. You've wasted a foot of paper. Who cares?
Yeah. Put it away. Let it sleep on it. The next morning with fresh eyes, you can look at it. And the great thing is our creation is paper. You can trim things down. You can manipulate the paper even more after the fact. There's sometimes I look at my peony, I'm like, oh my God, what did I put together? But then I just look at it. It's like, okay, I'm going to start fiddling with the petals, just kind of twerk it here, twerk it there. And suddenly before you know, I fixed it. So
that walking away is important. I've had a lot of epiphanies in the middle of the night. I will literally wake up in the middle of the night and say, that's how that works. That's how that's going to come. That's where I'm going wrong. And if you just keep at it, maybe, but when I say keep doing it, I mean, don't throw it away, although I've done plenty of that. But I think just keeping working on the same project is going to get you to the end, even if you think it's not going to go where you want it to go.
I totally agree with you. Everything's a learning process. And even if you don't get it now, you go back half a year later, you're going to nail that because you're there now. You know? Yeah. I think the lesson is just to be patient. Let things come when they should come. It takes time to grow as an artist and to know how to price. That said, our second lecture for the Paper X Talk series, Pricing with Confidence, is on November 14th. And so that's a couple of days from now. So if you guys want to hear more about pricing, the factors that Quinn, Jesslyn, Aaron, and I consider when we are determining how to price or quote, make sure you join us. Paper X Talk. Check it out. It's going to be on our website. So you can buy tickets $8 per lecture, or if you are a member of our directory, it's $5. So hope to see you there.
And we'll be talking about the different factors that goes into pricing, things that you might not be obvious on your list. I mean, supplies, paper, your time, value, yes, all of that, but there's a lot more that goes into it. And so we're going to talk about the process of how we put a target amount of sales that we do each month. So that way we can backtrack and say, we need to price it a certain way to meet our target budget for the month. And so I think it's a really interesting way to look at pricing, because there's so many different ways you can look at pricing, and we want to give you 4 different versions of it.
Listen to the first or watch the first one, and I think it's very valuable, especially for someone who's new and is struggling with pricing.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. It's been really fun just hanging out with the 4 of us, I guess, talking about pricing and hearing each other's stories. I mean, when we were first talking about putting this together and talking about pricing, we're like, oh, I really want to hear more, because there's so many different avenues you can go into. And it was just really fun to hear everyone's story and outlook and feedback. And also have you thought about doing this? Or did you even think about doing this? So that was really fun.
Yeah.
It's great to see how our industry coincides with the fresh cut florist industry and how similar they are in many ways.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure actually if we had invited someone who's a ceramist or who does embroidery, they too would have similar or overlapping, issues that we have, because we're all artists, we're all creatives. So, part of it is going to be not just hard numbers. It's going to be that difficult. Well, what value do you place on it? And how do you sell that? Because I'm all about, it's not just a number, it's also how you strategize to price it. How do you present it? How it's more than just a number. So it's going to be really interesting and exciting to hear from the other ladies about how they price and their approach. So hopefully you guys can join us. We'd love to see you there.
Exactly.
And Susan, thank you so much for joining us for this hour. It was such a wonderful time. We love catching up with you, and you're always a joy just to chat about anything. So, and of course, we're so thrilled that you stayed on as an admin, and we're very thankful and grateful to have you. You've run the makers meeting, and that's a huge part of our Facebook group. So thank you so much again.
Right. And don't forget the makers meeting's the last Saturday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific. So unless I'm traveling or something, that has to change. But thanks so much for having me. And to all of our friends out there, Quinn and Jessie are they are in real life, just like they are when we see them on video.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. It's so awesome.
If you're looking for a way to support us, please hit subscribe and write us a review. We would appreciate it so much.